Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to continue our look at the cartoon history of the universe by Larry Gonick. We're up to volume 4, part of the Old Testament, 1400 to 586 BC. This is a pretty crazy one because a lot of the history is derived from the Bible, which I don't know if historians consider that a reliable historical source or not. But so there's some stuff in here that's almost like, that sounds fantastical because it's from the Bible. We start off with another silly Larry Gonick cover. I like this crazy guy, Samuel. We have this little cute introduction where he draws himself, and these are always kind of entertaining. So here we go. Part of the Old Testament. So basically we're going to be focusing, the area we're going to be focusing on is Canaan, the land of Canaan. Canaan was always a war-torn area. In fact, the very first walled city was built there in the Stone Age, Jericho, because these people were surrounded by so many enemies, they had to build walls to protect themselves. The cartooning seems a little looser in this one. A little more like he's drawing it faster than before. So we see all the people who have conquered the land. It's almost everyone. Sumerians, the Egyptians take it over. As we saw last time, the Hyksos, the Hittites, on and on. He shows us the various areas of Canaan. There's different geographical areas, and even within Canaan they all fought each other when they weren't being invaded by other people. And of course one of these people were the Hebrews. So as we saw last time, Abraham, his wife Sarah, his nephew Lot, they emerged from Sumer and they headed to Canaan. They fathered many tribes, so basically they're the first Hebrews. Abraham begat Isaac. Isaac begat Jacob. Jacob actually wrestled an angel in a late night anxiety attack, he says. I like how Jacob's saying, God, even the angels are violent here. And Jacob begat the 12 sons of Israel. So one of them, Joseph, he actually was, he lived in Egypt. He moved back to Egypt, married an Egyptian wife, and was kind of had a high-level government job. So using his power, he gave his fellow Hebrews a place of land in Egypt. After he died, they were enslaved. We have a little footnote about Lot and his daughters. Just that crazy story in the Bible, how they were all isolated. So they got their father drunk so they could have sex with him, so they could have babies. The Bible is very perverse. So now we see, we learn a little bit about Egypt and how a lot of things people don't know. There were other slaves in Egypt too. It wasn't just the Hebrews. And there's a lot of Semites who were accepted in Egyptian society. They married Egyptians, they were assimilated. And that's probably where Moses comes from. Because Moses is definitely an Egyptian name. So now we learn all about Moses. He's a weirdo. Well, in this society, he kills a guy for whipping his slaves too hard, just murders them in a rage. He has to escape Egypt because of his shenanigans, and he goes to the Sinai Peninsula where he meets this guy Jethro. And Jethro takes a liking to him, and he even marries off his daughter to him, Zipporah. Zipporah the Pinhead. No, she's not a pinhead. Very strange name, though. And of course, he gets messages from God. He orders that Zipporah circumcise their son. And then he goes down to Egypt. We see the plague of frogs. Now, trying to put this in historical context, maybe there was a plague of frogs and Moses just said, this is my God's wrath to the Pharaoh. You better let my people go. But of course, in the Bible, it's, God caused this plague of toads. So he succeeds. And all of these slaves are freed. And I never knew this. They also take Joseph's mummy. Remember Joseph, who gave the Jews the land in Egypt. So it's not just the Hebrews, it's all the slaves of different ethnicities. They talk about the parting of the waves, if you ever saw the Charlton Heston movie. It's this fantastical thing where he makes the water split. But historians think that really the Egyptian troops, some of the Egyptian troops were chasing them. They really just drowned in some marshlands. Their chariots, couldn't make it through. So they wandered the desert. Apparently manna is the secretion of a desert insect. Manna is that miracle food that got them through the desert and helped them survive. I never heard of that. So apparently there really is manna, and it's insect poop. So this is when Moses goes up to the mountain to get the tablets. When he comes down with all the 10 Commandments, the Hebrews are worshiping a golden calf. And so he basically reestablishes a order and orders all the good Hebrews to kill those who are worshiping the calf. It's a slaughter. Larry Connick does warn at the beginning, this is one of the most violent of these volumes. So now we have, the Hebrews have their 10 Commandments. They're pretty much becoming like the Hebrews we see in the Old Testament. So they finally make it to Canaan. And there they proceed to attack every other tribe who lives there. They take down Jericho. They take down all these other people who live in Canaan. And then they settle. And they know they've settled because they buried Joseph's mummy finally. We have a little interlude from Larry Connick trying to place these in real time, all these events from the Bible. There actually are some clues, some Egyptian writings which mention things in the Bible, and we know what time those writings were written. So he's basically saying all this happened around 13 to 1400 BC. Which also brings up the interesting idea that last volume, we saw Akhenaten, the Egyptian, the heretic pharaoh, who basically claimed there's only one God. So who knows which way the influence went? Maybe Moses influenced Akhenaten. I think that it's higher chance Akhenaten influenced Moses, and he said, hey, I like this idea of one God. It's not Aton, but it's just monotheism. So the Israelites didn't really believe in kings. They just had judges. Basically, anytime there's a situation, the guy who seemed to have the most wisdom, have a better handle on the situation, they were like, okay, you're going to be the judge for a while and tell us what to do. So the the Hebrews continue to war against the other tribes, and they're pretty successful for the most part. Some of these stories are just very silly. Tales of the Judges, which I think are all written in the Bible. This one guy, Ehud, he assassinated this Moabite tyrant who was so fat that he couldn't pull his sword back out of his fat. That's not true. That's silly. But then here come the Philistines. And the Philistines were almost like the Vikings of the day. They were seafaring people, and they were just going around Canaan, kicking everyone's ass. The first time the Israelites meet them, Israel was roundly trounced. And at this point, we see the Ark of the Covenant. The Israelites would carry it into every battle. It contained the Ten Commandments, and some say even Joseph's mummy. The Philistines steal it. But then they're stricken with hemorrhoids. Now, I don't know, this just seems silly to me. I don't think the Bible talks about the Philistines being stricken with hemorrhoids. But Larry Ghana just talks about it straight. And I don't know. It just seems like he's just having a laugh. So basically the Philistine elders says, it's a curse from their God. We've offended him. So we should return that ark, which they do. So the Israelites have their ark back, and then nothing can stop them. So now we meet Samuel. And Samuel's going to be like basically behind the scenes for a while. Kind of the power behind the throne. There was a prophecy when he was born. This childless woman went to the temple, and they said, she basically prayed. She says, no razor will ever touch his head if you give me this baby. So Samuel never cut his hair. I don't think he ever looked like this. It's kind of funny to see the way he draws him. He's just like Thing or Cousin It from the Addams Family. So Samuel became the judge of Israel. So now the Israelites trounce the Philistines. And then eventually the Israelites want a king. They're like, yeah, all the other, people have kings. It'll make us stronger. He really seems to have a good time drawing his crazy hair. So, they don't want Samuel to be king. He's kind of crazy. But he's the judge, so they're like, pick a king for us. And so he picks this guy Saul, first king of Israel. And so he unites the Israelites and also had some military victories. But then after a loss, his hour is over. He's booted out. And so Saul meets this young guy, David, who plays the lute for him to entertain him. And next time the Philistines come around, basically their hugest hero, Goliath, challenges the Israelites. This is the famous story of David and Goliath. Goliath wasn't really a giant. He was just the biggest guy in the army, Philistine army. And so we see David killing him with his slingshot, his sling, I mean. And so now David's even more renowned than Saul. And I forgot to mention, Saul is still, he came back in favor. He's still king. He just went through a rough patch there. So he even marries off his daughter to David. But then he starts to get jealous of David's renown. And he makes it really hard for him to marry his daughter, though. He just wants to get rid of him. He says, if you bring me 100 foreskins of the Philistines, you can marry my daughter. And he gets 200 of them. This is a very strange story. So it looks like Saul attempts to kill David. So his wife, the king, Saul's daughter, and Jonathan, they help him escape. And so David goes up into the hills, and pretty soon, family, friends, the poor and the oppressed, they all joined him. These became the mighty men. That's what they called them, the mighty men. Sounds like a superhero group. And Saul could never catch him. And then the mighty men go over to the Philistines. And then within days, within a little short time after this, Saul was killed by the Philistines. So now Israel's split up into two. Basically, Saul's kids control part, and the mighty men control the other. So we see David becoming the king of Israel. There's one story after a military victory. He's so thrilled, I guess, he danced half naked through the streets, singing hymns of victory, kind of shocking everyone. This is weird stories in the Bible, like, okay, so he did that. And then we get this tale of Bathsheba, which we learned about from Chester Brown's book, which I can't remember the name right now, but I think it was his last book, where he illustrates tales from the Bible of prostitution and general salaciousness. Basically, Bathsheba's married to one of his generals or soldiers, so he purposely gets the soldier. He sends orders to have him put in a really dangerous military situation so he dies, so he can marry Bathsheba. Pretty shitty move. And then we meet Solomon. So then Solomon is born, and he grows up in this crazy household. And Solomon is the son of David and Bathsheba. Man, it's just the violence in this shit. I love in The Clockwork Orange how when Alex is sent to prison, all he can do, they make him read the Bible. And a psychopath like Alex, he finds it very entertaining because the Bible is just full of rape and murder and just the things he does when he's free, with the things he likes to do. And it's not like an exaggeration. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of kind of pulpy, exciting stuff in the Bible. Exploitation film type stuff. So as David gets older, his kingdom kind of falls apart. He's not as good a leader as he once was. And so then Solomon takes over. Larry kind of makes it seem like he's not as wise as as legend would have it. He just likes to spout goofy aphorisms all the time, but he's just like anyone else. We talk about the city of Tyre. I never knew this, but Tyre, they were like way more advanced in building things and just all kind of technology. So almost every culture would just hire them to like, hey, build us a city, build us some ships. So they supply ships and architects and engineers for Solomon to make Israel better. And here he is in his dotage, just spouting aphorism after aphorism, none of which are that that interesting or like wise. They're just like Hallmark card shit. So the kingdom is still split now, just between different rulers, and it would remain that way for quite a while. More incredible violence. And now is the rise of Assyria. Assyria were just like, these guys were just the bane of Canaan. They just went from city to city, just taking them out, because they had developed siege towers, battering rams. They had this technology where it didn't matter if you had a walled city, you weren't safe anymore. They were very brutal. When they took over a city, when they conquered a city, they would just burn and torture and behead and mutilate every single person in the city. So now all these warring factions in Israel, in Canaan, I should say, Judah, Israel, Damascus, the city of Tyre, Moab, they've been fighting forever. They all unite. And this coalition was able to hold off the Assyrians temporarily. But then a big problem arises when King Ahab marries Jezebel, a princess of Tyre. She is a worshiper of Baal. And so this splits Israel again. People who worship Baal, people who worship, Yeshua. And then we see the rise of Elijah the prophet. He's just a wild man who lives out in the desert, but he's hardcore. He's a hardcore Jew. So he's definitely stands on one side in this contest between Baal and Yeshua. This is just more stuff that's in the Old Testament. The thing about this issue is strange is like, I don't know if there's any historical accuracy. Like, is there historical records of a guy named Abraham? I guess the Bible is a historical document just as much as Herodotus. A lot of people say the father of history, Herodotus, most of his shit was just made up. I mean, he was just, but whatever, it gave us, there was something. It was almost like a broken clock. Some of the things were true. So it's just interesting to me, like, trying to parse out, like, okay, this is the Jewish religion part of the Bible, the fantastical stuff obviously didn't happen. A burning bush didn't talk to Moses. I mean, it could have. If he was schizophrenic, he would have heard it. But obviously there's lots of real history in it. There were people, it's the history of the Israelites. And then we see the rise of Yehu. And Yehu was a very formidable leader, had a lot of military victories. And that's where the band Drive Like Yehu got their name. It's actually a quote from the Bible, something about how he drives. So Jehu has a coup of Israel, but they dethrone him and basically proceed to have a golden age. And it seems like this is when they wrote the Torah and stuff, a lot of those early Hebrew scripts. And then Assyria returns and causes trouble. And once again, the Israelites have to go on an exodus. And this is the end of, pretty much the end of Israel. The Assyrians expelled all of the Jews, all of the Israelites. And these became known as the 10 lost tribes of Israel, which the Rastafarians are always singing about. The Assyrians would do this, they'd conquer a land, make everyone leave, then take other conquered people from their empire and put them on that land. So the new people who ended up in this area, Canaan, they combined their ideas with some Israelite ideas and became the Samaritans, the first Jewish sect. Now the people of Judah did not like this. So I did mention that Judah is still there. Judah was the southern part. That was because Israel was split. Or I should say, the Hebrews were split. And then the Canaanites, the Israelites, they were the ones who got expelled. But the people of Judah were still Jews. So they're watching this from across the border just saying, this is terrible. And so now the Assyrians attack Judah. They trash it. And then a miracle happens. It's not really a miracle, just shit happens. A plague struck the Assyrian forces. And so the Jerusalem and the capital of Judah was miraculously saved. And then finally, about 100 years later, the Babylonians, not the Assyrians, conquered Judah. So now there's no more Judah either. It was Nebuchadnezzar, that famous guy. And basically, there's another exodus. He just made all the Judeans march over to Babylon to be slaves again. And so now they thought that God gave them Canaan, but maybe they read it wrong. Maybe God gave them Babylon instead. So now the Israelites will be in Babylon primarily. And of course, then they'll disperse throughout the world until the rise of Israel in 1948. We have another reading list again, and the coming attractions. Next volume, Brains and Bronze, The Rise of Ancient Greece. So there you go, guys. Cartoon History of the Universe, Volume 4. And there's a lot of confusing, goofy names in there. I was getting lost. But like all of these things with these, these Bronze Age people or Stone Age people. But hope you enjoyed watching this with me. And these are a lot better than I'm making them out to be. I'm just giving you the history because I can't read the whole thing. I wish I could. Because, like I said, every panel has a kind of cute little joke. I realize, like I said last time, his jokes are never, fall over funny. But they're pretty much like dad jokes. But they're, really, really clever, good dad jokes. That's what almost all of his humor is. And it's kind of, a really, really good dad joke isn't that bad. It's kind of funny. So that's what makes these so easy to read and kind of fun. And, it makes history easier to swallow if you're not a big fan of history. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope to see you next time here at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.